My name is Bill Marler. I'm a food safety lawyer for the last 30 plus years in Seattle, Washington, and the proud publisher of Food Safety News. Yeah, the outbreak linked to Rizzo Lopez Foods has sickened 26 people thus far in 11 states. 23 of those people are known to be hospitalized. There are two deaths, one in California and one in Texas. And then there were two infants born prematurely that are likely also part of those numbers. The most interesting thing about this outbreak that I think the public should be aware of is that the first reported illness was in June of 2014. The last reported illness was in December of 2023. The questions that I've gotten a lot of is, why are we seeing illnesses spread out over a long period of time? And I think there's two really good reasons that I think that has happened. One is Listeria is a real opportunistic pathogen. It's a environmental pathogen, so it's found in a lot of places. But in manufacturing facilities that are cool and wet, like a cheese production facility, Listeria can, in a sense, set up home in pieces of equipment, and it builds up over time if the equipment's not cleaned properly, and then will slough off occasionally. So what we're seeing is likely impacts of sporadic illnesses over an extended period of time. So I think that's, why we're seeing this outbreak sort of beginning a long time ago and continuing perhaps even till the present when they shut the plant down. The other interesting thing that is, I think, important for the public to understand is that the advent of whole genome sequencing and whole genome sequencing, or WGS, is a technology that allows for the genetic code of the Listeria bug to be, in a sense, plucked out of the Listeria bacterium. And scientists can compare whole genome sequence of individuals and say, these people all got sick from the same source. And that the technology is super advanced. It's been advanced a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. And so I think one of the things we're seeing is that as illnesses were counted over time, after this, several of them, then it was really the public health entities that were saying, hey, we've got a match here amongst people. There's got to be a common source. And then it's, trying to figure out what that common source is. The final piece of the puzzle is, that once people are tested positive for Listeria, they're interviewed. And the problem a bit with Listeria and being interviewed is illnesses can happen between 3 days and 60 days. So trying to remember what it was that you ate in that time frame is really difficult. And so that's why, on one hand, it took a long time to figure this out. On the other hand, we can really rest assured that given the whole genome sequence technology, that, the CDC and health authorities have the right culprit. It's not unusual for a Listeria outbreak to last this long. We've seen it before. The Bluebell ice cream outbreak is one. You see it in situations where you have relatively shelf-stable products that are manufactured over a period of time. And so this is becoming more common. What's sort of making it more common is the fact that the health authorities are being able to use whole genome sequencing to link cases together. And I think that's one of one of the things that I think that is really good is that we're able to give the public and the industry a real hard sense that, we got the right target, and then why this outbreak continued to happen, and my strong suspicion, given the fact that product is tested positive, the plant tested positive, and all of these people tested positive, that what you had is a resident Listeria bug in that plant that every once in a while would wind up getting into the product that went out onto the market. Initially, the recall was just for the cheese products. And now what you've seen, and just in the last 24, 48 hours, is recalls of salad products from Trader Joe's and Costco and other entities where that cheese product was used as an ingredient in other things, including, salad dressings and things. So one of the things that, we're now starting to see is, the plant has been closed down, the product is being recalled, but you're starting to see ancillary recalls on products that, wound up having that same cheese in it. Once the FDA has traced the product back to the plant, and especially because a product tested positive in addition to the ill people, and they found the same Listeria strain, in the plant, it's a pretty common situation at that point that a plant is closed because clearly having Listeria in the plant, knowing that it's been a resident bacterium since 2014 at least, really sort of put the FDA in a position where, they can shutter that plant. And the plant obviously shuttered itself voluntarily, but if they hadn't, the FDA would have gotten a court order to shut them under the Food Safety Modernization Act. Listeria generally is, a sort of the short of botulism is the one foodborne pathogen that really makes people sick. It usually is when you see these outbreaks, it's usually, 90 plus percent of the people who get sick are hospitalized. And the death rate varies a bit, but it's a 25 to 30% of the people that it impacts, it makes it unfortunately kills, and that's usually the elderly and young children, babies. There are Listeria cases, usually in otherwise healthy adults that look much more like a typical foodborne illness, where you have diarrhea and you're lethargic, you're vomiting, that sort of thing. You see that, but what's hard sometimes to connect those up is that you don't have a culture. Uh, Usually in Listeria cases, they're, especially those people who are hospitalized, they're finding the Listeria in blood samples or in spinal fluid samples. So that's how they're able to find that Listeria. It's really been very difficult to culture Listeria out of stool like you'd normally see in a Salmonella, E. coli, Campylobacter outbreak. So there's a lot of cases that are, you know, we'll call them more mild cases where people are obviously not so sick that they're hospitalized. But there are a lot of those mild cases that are not going to be linked to this or linked with a high degree of difficulty. Women are immune compromised during pregnancy. That's just how it is when they're carrying a little human inside of themselves, and the body is dealing with that. So Listeria in pregnancy is a high risk, and that's why a lot of physicians and a lot of public health authorities are always telling women to be careful about cheeses, deli meats, sprouts, things that, people could consume that could have Listeria on them. It it's a it's certainly problematic for pregnant women trying to eat healthy. It really is. But what can happen is the woman can become sick, but that Listeria can be, transmitted from the mother to the baby through the placenta, and that child can either be born prematurely or it can be a fetal death. And so we see that a lot. Fortunately, in this outbreak, it doesn't appear that there were any, uh, miscarriages caused by this, but it also wouldn't surprise me that there were miscarriages linked to this product, but are never going to be counted because the doctors, didn't do bacterial testing of the placenta or the mother or the baby. Secondary cases are, you know, are not common in Listeria outbreaks. And what you see is infections going from the mother to the baby, but uh, very rarely see infections uh, coming from one ill person to another ill person, like you see in Salmonella, Campylobacter, Shigella outbreaks. So secondary cases are very uncommon. Candidly, in the last 30 years of handling thousands of Listeria cases, I cannot think of a secondary case. Most of the cases that we've been involved in, having been the consumption of the food. The public might remember in 2011, there was an outbreak of Listeria linked to cantaloupe from Colorado. It sickened 150 people and killed over 30. And so it was the largest foodborne death toll in nearly 100 years in the U.S. So Listeria is it's not only a ubiquitous bug, I mean, found everywhere, but boy, if it gets in a plant, it can really be a problem. And, we've certainly seen significant outbreaks with significant illnesses in the United States, Canada, and, I've been involved in a Listeria outbreak in South Africa where 1,000 people were sick and 200 died. So, yeah, it's a real public health threat in food supply. Each individual who is sickened and their family members, if people who died have claims that they can make against the company or companies involved in this. And this, it would include not only the cheese manufacturer, but the retail outlets where the products were sold, and the other products that cheese was used, as an ingredient. We really don't know the scope of this outbreak yet. We don't know if some of these ancillary products are also going to be linked. And my strong suspicion is as the recall happens, as the various retail outlets, Costco and others, are sending out notifications to their customers, people are going to go, "Oh, I remember having Listeria," or that now I understand why I was sick. So the role that we play in many respects is vetting whether or not a case is a case. And so we take that very seriously. And, the fact that, somebody needs to have Listeria and be a whole genome sequence match to the outbreak is going to be really key from a legal point of view. We've been getting a lot of phone calls from people who've gotten recall notices that recall having diarrhea a month ago or 2 months ago. Those are going to be difficult, if not impossible, to link. They certainly might be, but in order to prove things more likely than not in a courtroom, you really need that culture positive for Listeria. But ultimately, if those cases can be proven, the manufacturer, the retailer, the entire chain of distribution is on the hook for what happened to those people. And as you can tell, with 23 people hospitalized, this is a significant problem for not only the individuals who got sick and lost loved ones, but the companies are going to have to step up and be accountable.